Release the phone.
Yeah.
Can you see me now?
No.
No? I can see myself.
There seems to be a problem with the camera.
I put my hand
It
up.
must be a mirror, not a camera.
Maybe you've got the back camera on or something.
I don't know how to handle it. Shall I take it on the phone?
You can try.
I'll try on the phone.
What's the problem?
You cannot. She is not visible. The video is not working. Even Rajesh Bhat sir is not visible.
Oh, Anuradha is not visible, huh?
Yes. Huh.
Neither is Rajesh. Neither is Rajesh.
Yeah.
I'm there now.
Yes.
Rajesh is visible. Anuradha ji is still not visible.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Anuradha ji, कहाँ हो गए?
No.
कहाँ खो गए आप?
The video is not working. Looks like.
Where are you? Anuradha ji, I think your video is not on.
She's trying. She's trying.
Sir, you can we can start the webinar.
Oh, even a sound. Is this Anuradha ji's sound also is a problem?
What's the problem? Because I'm not technologically totally.
Maybe you can disconnect and connect again. Try.
I'm very much there.
We can't follow you.
No, it's pretty bad.
Video
No,
is
we'll try and fix up.
video is on.
Yes. Your mobile is working.
Yeah, you can start and can hear.
Yeah, we can see you now. No.
Yes. Yes.
We can see you. Try and speak.
She's connecting to the audio on the phone. Yes, you can. Her audio is on.
Can you hear us?
Again, her video.
Anuradha ji, do you hear us?
Mhm.
Oh God. Hello. Well, I think that it's already 3 minutes above. Shall we start then? I think while she fixes it up.
Yes.
Rajesh, what I suggest, oh, she's there. Have you connected?
She's connecting. Her audio is.
I think we should start, folks.
Yes.
Now she's
Yeah,
visible.
yes,
and
both.
audible. Yeah.
Everything is working. Video is on and okay, let's start then.
I'll start on mobile. Okay.
So, Kirtibhai, will you kick off?
No, we have to hear from Chitrakshi. Chitrakshi, do we start?
Yes, sir, we can start. So
Wait
we
for
can
a minute.
start.
Okay. Thank you, Chitrakshi. I think friends and colleagues, it's my very special privilege to welcome you at the 119th edition of INHAF's webinar series on Rethinking City. Jeroo, you must understand that we've been working on it for a long time, 119th webinar. As you well know, INHAF has been running this webinar series for the past 3 years. And during this period, we have had more than 500 urban experts, specialists, professionals, and community groups from all over the world using this platform to share their views, their perspectives, and their solutions as well. This entire effort is on solutions. We also debated some 40 to 50 different urban themes and sub-themes. And that included things like urban planning, governance, climate change, water, rivers, investment, housing, transport, just about everything, the 40 to 50 themes. And even city and Gandhi. We had two webinars on city and Gandhi, but everyone said Gandhi never spoke a word on cities. But we essentially had two remarkably good webinars on city and Gandhi. And it has been a wonderful learning experience for us. And I'm sure people who heard these webinars. I'm delighted that today we are presenting a new subject that rarely gets debated, let alone highlighted by people who work on cities and urbanization. We are today talking about child and city. And we are asking a question. Are cities, as they grow and develop, fair to the children? And the concern is very much in the title of this meeting and the question itself, that we have very deep questions about how children are being looked at. And I'm happy that to discuss this particular subject, a rarely debated subject, we have some experienced and committed people who have worked on children for a very long time in their careers. So we really look forward to a very educated and very knowledgeable conversation today. But before I thank the anchor and the panelists for this webinar today, let me make two announcements. One is that our friend Kabir Bajpayee, an architect who has been working with children and the schools for a very long time and was to make a presentation today, is unable to join us as he is unwell. He's far away in Meghalaya and is not able to connect well. We'll miss Kabir today, but we'll find a way to get him to come and present his work to you sometime, because believe me, and I know it very well, it's a very, very interesting work that he's doing, very meaningful work. Announcement is about Bharti Ali ji. Just a second. Bharti Ali ji, who has been presented as the executive director of INHAF. We're very sorry that is not what it is. And she's here today. And of course, she's been working for a long time. So she's here, not so as a child actor. To all those who made time for this webinar today. Jeroo Billimoria, known for long, but was able to connect only this week after a few decades. Jeroo, almost few decades, not only years, few decades. She's a well-known child activist and played a big role in starting Childline program in the country, about which you're going to hear a lot today, I understand, because good number of people who are here essentially are the product of working on Childline program. She now lives and works in Netherlands. Rajesh Bhat, who is anchoring this webinar today, was my colleague at Ahmedabad Study Action Group. We call it a SAG for decades once again, and has done pioneering work on children as the director of Childline Ahmedabad City on behalf of Ahmedabad Study Action Group. And of course, he has been doing enormous amount of work on
So you, you're not
Or
audible.
have we lost connection?
Yes. Hello. Kirti ji.
Rajesh, maybe you can step in.
Okay, I think
He has
his
got disconnected.
yeah, his connection is lost.
Yes.
Well,
He's-
he was
Hmm.
telling about me, so
And that's why.
so that's the right time to step in. Anyway, I worked for Assad for almost 3 decades, and since then I'm on my own, and I have another work for another organization called Swapat Trust and Aware Foundation based in UK. My areas of experience have been child rights and child care and protection, rural poverty. I'm not so much of an urban person, so to say, because I've worked extensively in rural areas and Panchayati Raj also. But today I'm here as the uh, child rights activist. I have a long experience with Childline also, thanks to Jeroo Billimoria, who gave us the first Gujarat Childline for Ahmedabad, and then a series of them during the earthquake times. In fact, our Ahmedabad Childline was launched on the day of the earthquake, 26 January 2001. Anyway, that's all about the history. But now let's get on with the subject because we have little time and many experts to listen to. We are going to talk about cities and children. Are children properly treated in our cities? If all the four panelists were to respond in one word, they would probably say no. I would at least say no. But let's not make it so simple. Let's look into the nitty-gritties of the subject. When we talk of cities, we all know that the world over, including in India, there is rapid urbanization taking place, and cities are seen as growth engines, economic engines, and they increase the GDP of the country, etc., etc. But the human aspect of the cities is lost somewhere in this hurry uh, to make them the all-powerful entities. Uh, cities are when we talk of cities, we think of, I think we should think of, not that we always think of, but we should think of uh, the infrastructure, the governance part of it, uh, the institutions, uh, and the capacities of the service providers. These 3 or 4 aspects are very important. And of course, the policy and budget. When Bharti ji is there, how can I forget policy and budget? So these 4 or 5 aspects are important when we talk of cities. But I think that we just have caught on to the idea of economics more than any other aspect. Governance, uh, infrastructure, yes, maybe it's good, but the governance capacities, policies, and budget parts are really a lot, have a lot of scope to improve. Uh, when we connect cities with, I mean, when we juxtapose them with children, for the sake of this discussion, uh, we have to look at children as the present day citizens and not as future citizens. We always talk about children as future citizens of this country, but no, they are citizens of today, and therefore they have all the rights that all the citizens should have today itself. And if they are going to be, of course, the policy makers and implementers of tomorrow. So what realities we offer them today in our cities are going to shape their vision and dreams for the future. And that will reflect when they become the implementers, or when they come to the seat of authority. Therefore, it is very important that we look at children as citizens and not just as little ones. Though internationally, for many years now, children have got all their human rights through the UNCRC, as all of you know. Even I'm sure the participants of this webinar also must know that UNCRC is effective from 1989, and India ratified it in 1992. And since then, all our policies are attuned to the UNCRC guidelines or UNCRC principles. But at the same time, we must see that our children are very vulnerable and sort of secondary citizens. They are not considered as important citizens. They are not looked after properly. And there is ample evidence anywhere you look at, from micro level to the macro level, that this is true. I can present you a collage of pictures just from my experiences around me, and some of the policy level experiences also, as an evidence to show that children are not looked after properly. For example, in recent times, in 4 cities of Gujarat, 141 children lost their lives in mishaps, in disasters, which were specific to children. One was a tuition class. The other one was a play area where children got together for play, and 2 others were different kind of spaces. So 141 children losing their lives. There are many children of migrant families who come to cities for construction labor. Their children lose their lives just because they sleep in buildings with no walls, and still the labor department has done nothing about it. When all these and many other disasters are taking place, you will probably not believe that this state, Gujarat, has no state SCPCR, that is State Commission for the Protection of Rights of Children, since 2019. So many years have gone by without the apex body in place. Ahmedabad has no government managed boys home. So all sorts of evidences show us that we are not treating our children well. Recently, as a network, CRCG, Child Rights Collective Gujarat, met the education minister and showed him the calculations that just under 1% of increased budget of the existing educational budget would fulfill all the gaps in the current, all the vacancies in the primary school teachers' employment. I mean, there are 23,000 teachers missing in Gujarat. They are not in place. And we calculated that if they are freshly employed by the government salary standards, they just require less than 1% of the current budget. We met the education minister. He was convinced. He wrote a letter to the bureaucrats, but nothing has happened yet, and not a single teacher is inducted. So all such things are taking place, but we have to think in terms of improving this scenario. So my request to the panelists today would be to make their presentations, if possible, in two parts. One, the first should be in the given subject to them, they should present the current situation scenario, and then in the second appearance, they can talk about the recommendations or suggestions that they would like to offer. I think for the time being, this is what I have to say. I would chip in as and when required. So may I invite Jeroo Billimoria, the first panelist, to present her. Jeroo was already introduced by Kirti Bai, but let me add to it. She is from Bombay, the place where I also belong to. And she's a MA in social work. She taught in her initial career, she taught at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences for many years. And during that tenure, she managed to start the child line and get it. The most important, I think, part was that she got it accepted by the government, and it became a national project and spread all over the country, even when she was not there. So that, I think, is her strength. She knows how to build up organizations, what type and how. Since then, she has been living in Netherlands and has been working on the same subject internationally. She has started several organizations like Aflatun, CY, SciFi, and currently she is working on what is that, 2030?
Catalyst.
Yeah. So I think Jeroo can take over and present herself. Thank you.
Thanks, Rajesh. Thanks, Kirti Bhai. It's lovely to be on a panel with all of you, with Anuradha, Bharti, Bhuma. It's really nice. So thank you for having me over here. I interned or did my internship. We had field action projects with Asag and
Yes.
Kirti Bhai and Rajesh as a student. So you can imagine they've been a major influence in helping make this happen and everything that is there. So I think it is really, really nice. And thank you for having me. So when they reached out, I was like, how can I say no? After you two have been Gurujis in different ways. So really nice to be on this panel.
Our pleasure.
Really. The main thing is child in the city. And what are we looking at? What is the context and what are the solutions? So these are the main things which I need to talk about. I think our cities, and this is what when we were talking earlier, I said child in the city is such an umbrella term. We have the street kids who live on the streets. They were the kids who inspired me to start Childline. We have kids living in slum communities with families. We have kids living in chawls who then have a different level. Then we have middle class kids. And then we have these very fancy brats, as I call them, living in high-rise condominiums who probably have a lot. So the spectrum of child in cities is a really, really, really big spectrum. And to cover each one of them would be long, if we had to go in depth, would be long. So I'll just give key highlights to all of them and what I think are across the board anyway missing with children in cities. So first thing I think, and I said this, is across all major cities, but Bombay, where I am from, so I'll talk more on that. But I think across all major cities in India, if there is one thing which is missing, it is an ability for play. Play for children, just simple play as an option is something which is missing. So I think if I were to look at it across the board, play is missing, good quality of health because of high degree of air pollution is missing. So I think that is missing. And I say with play linked is a sense of security and well-being and safety. So wherever you are, I think these, I think, are the three umbrella things which are missing. And if I have to look at it from the calls which came in Childlines, and of course they have evolved over the years. So if I had to look at some of the problems which were there, for the street kids, it was basically a sense of lack of protection because they were, they were being abused by the police. They never had access to proper health care. They were alone, food, lack of employment, exposure to drugs, etc. So they, I think, were the most hit in terms of the problems in the city. The children in the communities, I think they didn't have health care, hygiene, and also quality of education is another issue which is there because, well, our municipal schools, well, we can give another whole session on municipal schools in cities, Kirti Bhai. Think about it,
Sure, sure.
Basically, no good housing was there. So I think that is the whole other problem which is there. Middle class children, I think the maximum number of calls we got were on sponsorship and that, and also basically, as I was looking at the data, a lot of stress linked to academics. And I think that was something which was a really, really big problem, which was there. And I think as you go, children living in high rises, I think academia, ironically, loneliness and cyberbullying were some of the main problems. So I think we have a whole spectrum of problems. And I think for every child, their problems are all real. And if I had to look at what are the solutions, because Rajesh, you said we should talk also about solutions. I think living in a city for a child, safety probably is one of the least is when I was a child at the age of 10, I used to walk to school happily. That level of safety is no longer there across. And I think that is an issue for children in solutions. And we need to look at how are we going to be able to create in all our cities a sense of safety and well-being for children. I think that would be something which we need to look at. We can do it through neighborhood schools, neighborhood committees. Something that I'm trying with Childline 3.0 is looking at how can we create prevention committees with few groups of families everywhere. So I'm going to ask all of you on the call later, okay, what can we do to create prevention-oriented communities? So I think that's something which we will also be looking at, which I will be looking at also. So I think that is one of the things I would say the biggest issue and the biggest solution is creating a prevention network. Second is creating a play network, because when you have play spaces, even if they are small, even if they are made from basic things, you're creating a sense of community and mental well-being for the children. Because more learning happens with play than it happens with anything else. So I think that is another thing which we need to look at. And when you tie up play with sports we know is part of development. The Olympics Games recently took place, and my husband's Dutch and I'm Indian. And Netherlands, a country of 18 million people, had like 40 medals or some such ridiculous amount. And then there was India, where we had 8. And we have 1 billion people. And for me, it made me realize that we as a city don't really have sports built in. That it's not that our children are any less talented, but how many swimming pools do we have? How many places do we actually have for children to just run so they can develop their athletics? Poorer countries than India had much more. So I think being able to build this in and to build it in for character is another thing I think we need to look at as a solution for cities. And last but not the least, quality housing, and ASAG has done more on that than any other organization. So I think I don't really need to go into that. So if I have to conclude, I would say the key solutions that we need to look at are how can we respond to the development needs of the child and the social needs of the child, and protect a child from all abuse and well-being. So I think this, to me, is what we need to look at, and that's how we can have safe, healthy cities focusing on well-being of children. And with that, I hand it back to both of you, Rajesh and Kirti Bhai. So over to you.
Thank you, Jeroo. That was excellent. You first defined, showed the whole range of children that you come across in the cities. And therefore, the problem is complex because on the one hand, you have the street children, and on the other hand, you have children who live in high-rise apartments and are affluent, but each one is facing his or her problem or is entangled by something or the other which troubles him or her. And thank you for also suggesting some solutions, which are, of course, easier said than done. You spelled out three things: play areas, safety, and access to good housing, which particularly would affect the poorer children who live on streets and pavements. And probably you know that ASAC did a study of the street children in 2006-07, and that had many interesting findings to offer. Well, this is not the forum to discuss that. So thank you, Jeroo. And we will, if required, you will have to chip in again with your inputs. Shall I now call Bharti Ali, to present her, to make her presentation? Bharti is a child rights defender and an expert on child rights. She's based in Delhi. She used to be once the executive director of HUC. We can't, sorry, Bharti, we can't leave this one and keep on repeating it. Hope HUC doesn't mind that. I'm sure they won't. But now she's working independently. She started her career after her MA in sociology from Jamia Millia Islamia by working for the families affected by government schemes and government projects. And within that, she immediately saw that children were the most affected, and they were not even considered as sort of victims or affected people. So her attention was drawn to children. And since then, she has been working, focusing more on children's issues and children's rights. She did this through research and advocacy to start with. But while doing that, she also had another realization that the service providers, the people who were supposed to cater to the needs of children, had very limited capacities. And therefore, she also turned to capacity building of the service providers in the government and outside of the government. And she has done a lot of work in research and advocacy. She has several papers and publications to her credit. So, Bharti, we hope to hear from you about the policies and budget. Of course, we will not leave the budget part, as you are known as the budget woman, at least to us. So what allocations are there for children, and in particularly in the subjects that, for example, Jeroo mentioned, play areas and other things. So over to you, Bharti. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, Jeroo has actually laid the foundation for what I'm going to be presenting, so I won't run through the gamut of issues that children in urban areas and cities face. Although they comprise about 32% of the 377 million urban population in India, there is actually very little being done in terms of investing money, investing funds on issues that confront children in the cities. We are all aware of the health issues, as well as issues like children living in slums facing evictions day in and day out. There is no security of tenure. There is a huge drug menace which has gotten into all the cities across the country. And very little is we're not being able to do much about that. So, in addition to issues which are related to health, pollution, environment, there are a range of other issues that children are facing today in the cities. And both children from well-off families as well as children of marginalized sections of the society. Crime, if you look at crime data, then NCRB has been giving us some crime statistics, and we see an increase in the crime statistics for about 12 out of the 19 cities for which the NCRB gives us data. Kanpur being the highest, it has witnessed 123% increase over the year 2021. And the other cities include Hyderabad, Delhi, of course, Surat, Mumbai, Bangalore, Ahmedabad, Kolkata, Jaipur, Ghaziabad, Kochi, and Kozhikode. So, it's not as if states like Kerala are free. We've got Kochi and Kozhikode figuring in on the crime statistics. Neither Gujarat, we've got Surat and Ahmedabad figuring there, and Delhi, of course. So there isn't a state, which is spared. And again, if we look at both crimes against children as well as crimes which are alleged against children, which is about crimes by children, you see that there is a parity. So a lot of the cities where you see high crimes against children, you'll also see that a higher number of children are coming in conflict with the law as children who are breaking the law. And that needs to be understood, very categorically. When I say that, it's if I look at the crimes committed under the Indian Penal Code, now the BNS, theft is the largest, crime in which children are found involved. Again, pointing to the fact that it's the poverty which is pushing them to this kind of crime. So it's theft followed by causing hurt, and then robbery and burglary, and then, some of the other ones. Including sexual violence, but then that's the order that I mentioned. And if you look at the special laws under which children are found committing crimes, then it's offenses under the POCSO Act, which is sexual offenses, which is the highest, followed by Excise Act and Prohibition Act. In fact, there are cases from Ahmedabad where children are booked under the Prohibition Act, considering that there is liquor prohibition in the state. Then there is the NDPS Act. So these are largely where most crimes under the special laws fall. Mental health issues are a very serious concern of children today, and very little is being done despite India now having a Mental Health Care Act. And facilities that are meant to be there for provision of mental health care. It is the most expensive form of healthcare today. So, when we look at budgets, now coming to that, health is one sector where much expenditure is out-of-pocket expenditure. It's private expenditure. Despite governments trying to invest in the health sector, that is how the situation is. So the share of children in the union budget has actually fallen down over the last couple of years. It was 4.52% of the union budget in 2014-15. And today it's 2.28%. So that's a huge fall in a situation where actually we need to be investing more in children and children's rights. In a situation where we are committed both internationally and nationally, with all kinds of policies and plans in place. We have the National Policy for Children 2013, which actually talks about, giving safe spaces for children, children's participation in not just families and communities, but children's participation in all levels of governance is what the National Policy for Children says. And then we have a National Plan of Action for Children, which is dated 2016, which again specifies aspects related to education, health, as well as protection and participation. And I think we've overlooked the participation component completely in all these years. We've involved children. It's so ironical that we've involved children as agents of change when it comes to environment issues. So a lot of environment campaigns run by children. But on other issues, we really don't engage with them. When we are developing master plans, for the urban cities, when the urban local bodies are working on the master plans, they don't really engage with children to know what is to be done, what is required, what are their concerns. So that's a huge gap which needs to be met. Again, within the budgets for children, it is so sad to see that we today do not have a budget for the National Child Labor Project, which was initiated actually to bring relief and to provide rehabilitation to children who are rescued from child labor. But it is almost now assumed that there is no child labor in the country. No children under 14 are working in the country is an assumption that we are living with, which is so far from reality, particularly in urban cities, as we see. And in rural areas, of course, agriculture was never counted as, as an area from where children needed to be rescued or they needed any assistance. But yeah, coming to cities, that's the situation, and we don't have this scheme now. The idea was that we have the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, wherein all children should be mainstreamed into regular schools. And it has a component for bridge school education as well. But to what extent it is being implemented is a very big question. My personal experience has been that we used to have, the special training centers, the NRSTCs, non-residential special training centers, as well as residential special training centers. But post-COVID, many of them have become non-functional. So how are we bridging that gap? These training centers were actually to take care of these children who were rescued or who needed that educational support and then could be mainstreamed to regular schools. But if they're not functioning the way they used to earlier, then what really is happening with the bridging of the age and education gap, as well as for children who have been out of school for a long time? That's another question. And the budget, if you look at Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan budget, that hasn't really increased over the last few years. So if the National Child Labor Project is closed down, assuming that children will be mainstreamed, one would expect that the budget for Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan should go up, which has not really happened at the same scale, the way it ought to have happened. Then, some of the other programs are programs related to health and nutrition. We now have the Poshan Abhiyan, and, it's in its new phase now. But the situation in urban areas with respect to Anganwadis is really poor. And that's a study which has been done by, different organizations. CBGA did one budget analysis where they found that, you don't have enough Anganwadis in the cities. And therefore, the number of beneficiaries is also very low. So what are we really doing if we are not making those changes in our Poshan Abhiyan to cater specifically to children in urban cities? And it's not as if NFHS 5 is telling us anything great. We may have reduced stunting for children in cities, but it's still as high as 30.1%. And the other parameters on nutrition are quite poor for urban areas. So we need to look at these aspects more carefully. And nothing really, if you ask me to prepare a budget for children in urban cities, then it's very difficult to do that analysis. It's not difficult to prepare a budget. It's difficult to currently do an analysis of budget, because the current budget does not give you those different subheads which would tell you how much is really going for children. And another irony is that even though the government of India has come out with a budget statement for children, every year when the budget is announced, the expenditure budget has a statement. Earlier, it used to be called statement number 22. Now it's statement number 12, which is on children. So what they actually do is collect whatever is there from the different ministries for children and present it as budget for children. And in that list of ministries, you do not find Ministry for Urban Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. So there's no scheme, nothing, no contribution coming from that ministry into children's budget. That's where we are as far as budgets are concerned. As far as if you typically look at the budget of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and Urban Poverty Alleviation, then we've had the JNNURM submission 2 and the Rajiv Awas Yojana, which have focused on decent shelter and basic services. But again, children have been kept out of purview in these kind of interventions. Even the monitoring systems, the MIS, which has been developed, and today we are Digital India. So even in the Digital India and the MIS that has been developed for by the Ministry of Urban Affairs and Urban Poverty Alleviation, we don't see indicators for children's well-being and development. So there's that much we are doing for planning for children. Data is a huge gap. It's a huge gap because we haven't had a census since 2011. Even if we were to have a census, we know that a lot of issues are not covered by census. Some of those are covered by NSS and NFHS, but then for NSS and NFHS, the urban level information is actually missing, is not adequate rather. So there are gaps as far as data is concerned. And without data, how do you really plan for children is a very big question. So yeah, many recommendations can come forward. We can look at, one of the major recommendations is that under Mission Vatsalya, now the ministry has said that 5% of the budget of urban local bodies and PRIs is to be spent on children's rights. And nobody in the country as of now knows what is going to be the flow, what is the flow chart going to look like? How is it going to pan out? Where are they going to get that 5% from? And this is 5% in addition to the existing government programs and schemes. So 5% of the budget of the urban local bodies and Panchayati Raj institutions. Where is that going to come from, considering that our urban local bodies and PRIs are already facing a huge problem in terms of generating revenue? These are questions I think that one still has to figure out, and I'll leave on that note.
Yeah, thank you, Bharti ji. You spelled out some of the problems faced by the children in the area of the budget, as well as in schemes. For example, as you mentioned, Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, now it's called Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, doesn't take care of the education of children who were earlier child laborers and have been rescued. You talked about the lack of Anganwadi facilities in urban areas, and which we have also experienced. It's really bad situation. Rural areas are a bit better off than the urban areas, and therefore the urban children don't get their share of right that they should get in terms of nutrition and initial education at the Anganwadis. It is also significant that you mentioned that the budget for children has been going down from 4.5% of the total budget to 2.28 in the last 5 years or so. So it is all said and done, we are not doing enough for our children so far as the policies and budgets are concerned. So thank you, Bharti ji. We will ask you questions if need be, or if there are questions from the participants. So for the time being, I think it was excellent to hear you and hear about some of the researches and budgets that you have analyzed. Budgets also, as you mentioned, are becoming difficult to analyze because the subheads are not given, and that also is a way of not being transparent, so to say. Okay, thank you, Bhartiji. May I now invite Anuradha ji to speak on her subject. And let me first introduce Anuradha ji. She is basically from Pune and has done her master's in food and nutrition, but a PhD in education, and has developed a special program called Gammat for children who are not into the mainstream education so very well, and like the children who have dropped out, children who were rescued as child laborers, street children, etc. And the results shown by this Gammat are very encouraging, as I have understood from an interaction with Anuradha ji. She has also worked on, after the closure of the child line, she has also worked on a different helpline for children, which is called Bal Aadhar. And she is a vehement and forceful advocate and defender of child rights. And it would be absolutely a pleasure to hear from Anuradha ji. So welcome, Anuradha ji.
Thank you so much for having me on the webinar. First of all, I think whatever points, many of the points I had, Jeroo and yourself have covered. And I had a longish paper written, but the thing is that when I saw Jeroo, I remembered her. When she used to take case presentation, she would say, okay, now 4 lines, no, now only 2 lines, now only 2 words. So that's how the childline teams have been trained. So I remembered that, and I'll be as brief as possible. My position now here is that what we are seeing now is that India has indeed ratified the CRC. Laws are in place, machinery is in place, but mindset is missing, totally missing, right from grassroots level to, I should say, the highest offices in the country. Child rights are often looked as confrontational by adult population, especially in a traditional society like India, where questioning any kind of superiority is not a good thing. So if questions are not to be asked, the child is not a good child. He needs to be disciplined. So right to participation, which I was asked to dwell on, the first stumbling block is right here. The culture of silence that we develop in societies like ours. Women shouldn't speak up, children absolutely not. And, you know, all the hierarchies in caste and everything. Anyway, what I would like first to say is that we are looking at in all our planning and all our development programs and generally making the laws, we are looking at the visible children or the visible needs of children. So when government plans, say for nutrition and health and all, they talk about vitamin A supplementation and immunization and outlays for midday meal programs and all. And because it's very easy then to get the statistics and get make the allocations, etc. But the invisible is often missed out. This is a word I picked up from a UNICEF a paper. They say that we are looking at macro things and missing out on invisible, and that's why we really cannot actually give rights to the children. Now declaration of laws and plans for provisions and all that's like the government looks at it like a magic wand. That is not going to change things. Now, for example, right to life is there, but amniocentesis, feticide, gender-related feticide is rampant. Anybody who has worked with childline can tell you how many cases of that kind we deal with, and it even has a social sanction. So right to identity, if you go right by right, in each right you will say, no, the right is not granted to the child in reality. There is a right to identity, but then there are problems of home deliveries. And so the births are not being registered. So when I'm talking about problems, I'm also pointing out at solutions, because unless and until all the deliveries are registered, how will the poor government even plan for the number of children that we have, be it food, be it nutrition, or be it any other facility? So this is one of the aspects. Jeroo has already pointed out the importance of play, which is completely neglected. I want to point out to another factor of education. But before that, somebody, Rajesh Bhai, mentioned this Gammat Shala. What I noticed while working with underprivileged children about 40 years ago, maybe most of them were child laborers or school dropouts. One thing we all know, the push out factors in schools, no need to go into that. But there are a lot of pull out factors also. And one of the most important pull out factor I found was most of the slum dwellers are first generation, second generation, third generation migrants from poor areas of the state or the country. They harbor a huge inferiority complex which they were passing out to their children. Now, first of all, there is parental neglect. Importance of education is not understood. And main thing with passing on of this inferiority complex, what happens is there is no self-esteem in children. There's total lack of ambition or achievement motivation. And all this together means that they get into a trap of their parents. They are social failures. They get into addictions because their role models are the dadas in the community or their fathers who are drinking to drown their frustrations. The lot of aggression going on, fathers beating up mothers, etc., etc. So these children who drop out often follow their role model dadas in gambling, and simple play activities become gambling activities with money riding on them. So that is the thing that we tried in Gammat Shalas, that first of all to put all children in regular schools, come what may, even sign as parents, and then ensure that they stay in school. And what we thought was a very well developed and well thought of scientifically designed educational model, which was really succeeding even within the first few months. The children gave us a huge lesson. This is what happens when you give children voices. In the first parents meeting that we had, parents asked us, what are you doing here? No books, no notebooks, and you're playing and you're saying you're studying. So our playway method was not to be understood. So immediately the children around said, oh, what we get here is attention which you don't give us. It is here that we can speak our minds. It is here we can we get a nice hug when we need one. So for the children, and this I've found repeated in de-addiction programs we did for platform children, that is the railway platform children, or when I worked with the juvenile offenders in the observation home for several months. This became the key, where you allow the child to talk, you allow the child to participate, and then he will open up, and then you really know these invisible needs. And if you address them, that absolutely doesn't require money. It's just a little love, little caring, a little counseling, and the child on his way to success. I'm happy to share all that I have 100% results for the last 40 years in school board examinations, even the school dropouts. And all of them have gone on to graduate by their own. I gave no charity. I don't believe in charity measures. So it has become a successful model, which can be replicated in juvenile homes. It can be replicated in platform children or in schools too. The point is, all the declarations or whatever we do, unfortunately, doesn't allow the child to talk and take into consideration what the child wants. Now, again, if we go deeper, the kind of education we give, okay, there can be one Nyan Devi and one Gammat Shala promoter. But what about or another organization also doing so? But what about the lakhs of children who don't get this opportunity. Now, what kind of education we have? It is more regimentation than education. Vivekananda's definition we like very much, and have made it a part of our Jnanadevi manifesto, that it is education is something for developing perfection in man. Now, how will that perfection develop if you constantly regiment children? There is no recreation is even, it's a right of the child, but it's not, it's a luxury. It's a luxury even to the most affluent children. Jeroo was talking about play and she was talking about swimming pools and so. But you know, sometimes I feel we don't need that kind of play. We want time and place for free play. That free play can, you know, it has of course the physical and motor development and physical development. I mean, it does that for the child, but for the mental health, as Jeroo rightly said. But then, you know, the creativity is also developed, and to learn to be a loser and a leader in the same group can only be cultivated through play activities. And this has to be free play. Nowadays, when the middle class or the upper income group children, they talk of play and importance of play, to them, it is some kind of a coaching class, badminton, tennis, cricket, dance, music, drama, whatever. Again, another regimentation, fixed timings, no free time. Holidays are meant for summer camps because parents don't want to take care of the children the whole day. They have their own difficulties. So this is what is, okay, we have cities, we don't have play spaces. So we developed Bal Bhavans. But Bal Bhavans is another type of regimentation. So you come from school, you do your homework, run to the tuition class or run to a Bal Bhavan. On Sundays and holidays, you have these other classes. And then in the holidays, you have the camps. So there has to be some, I have seen in some countries, even the smallest villages, like in Germany, for example, every colony has this free open space for children to play with some equipment like slides and swings. That is the kind of play activity we need. Our planners, they have these spaces, but the moment they see a free place, some corporator or some big shot wants to take it up and build a Samaj Mandir there, which only becomes a place for gambling dens for the adults, which the children very much like to follow because they are natural followers of the adults. So this is what is happening. So compulsory in planning, Kirtibai, you are the architect, compulsory in planning, we need these open play spaces and not regimented play, but free play. Arey, mitti se nata mat todo or akash se nata mat todo. That is what I keep shouting. Nobody listens to me though. Anyway, now neglect of children is another very, very urban phenomena. Parents being occupied all the time in their work and whatever they do, and their free time in parties and whatever. There is no time for children. Okay, it's a punishable offense. But how do you define neglect? How do you define neglect? Only the child will tell you what is neglect. I'll share an example with you. When we started working in the observation homes, when I was on the juvenile board, I said, I don't want to sit just on the chair. I want to talk to the children. So when we started there, we started a theater-based, music therapy-based and touch-based model of Gammat Shala with my colleagues in my office. And the children first, they first couldn't believe that something like this is happening. Then, after 4-5 days, they would simply cry. Hours together, they would cry. And then they started sharing their problems, their issues, which we could address by talking to the judges. The laws were there, but nobody there to really see to it that the children got the benefit of it. There were problems in the shelter. There were problems what to do after leaving the shelter. So all this could be addressed because children could speak, and they got an opportunity. First it was catharsis, and then it was, and the most touching point of all these children, whether they are on the platform or whether they are abandoned street children or they are say in the shelters or in observation homes, they tell you what we like most is the attention you give us and the loving hand you put on our backs. Now we can never go wrong now, because then it will be like cheating you. Why can't parents and children have this through their good communication? This is a bond the parents should have, not an outsider like Childline or an outsider like Jnanadevi or some organization doing it. So this parental neglect and then education, I would like to go back to the proper education would only give the child the skills to express himself, and it will give, and the exposure also to see around, and the exposure, and then that is how he will start questioning what is right and what is wrong, and then comes the right to participation. If a child who's gone through this regimentation of no, you have to do what I tell you through home, school, neighborhood, and society, how is he going to understand injustice? And even if he does, where is the platform to question injustice? Poor fellow, he had one child line to to help. Now that's gone. And many children are telling us that's gone. There is sexual abuse is so rampant in our society and so perverse that in fact, all child lines can write a book on perversity in this sexual abuse happening. And now with porn addiction, it has gone even worse. It's come down to, the age has come down and everything has come down of the culprits and the victims. Both the ages are coming down. And this is again because of parental neglect and the COVID related issues where children, everybody had a mobile in hand for even for their education. So again, there is a confusion between child labor and JJ Act, which continues about the age, and that is why we don't have proper planning for child labor. So now we have children who are migrated rather, trafficked or maybe bonded, coming from states like Rajasthan and border states and Bihar and Chhattisgarh and all, engaged in all kinds of labor. They are dumped in sheds which even cattle won't be put, and food is just one-time dish of rice or chapati which their older person would make, older child would make, and they are craving. When we go and talk to them and be very friendly, they just cling to us. They call us mothers and they cling, or dadas and tais, and cling to us. The love that is missing. This emotional abuse is horrible. Can't we do something about it? And there is no, after childline is gone, there is no network that will take care of the children from various states, various cities, who are either lost, trafficked, put into child labor, put into child prostitution, sold for child marriages, nothing. So we need a network. That is a solution. Okay, you don't like a child line, you develop your network and make budgets available for this. By the way, there is a clip sent to me of, I don't know if this is the right time to say, but of a well-known minister who said child line is nothing but they just work through police, where the facts you all know, we hardly give 20% of the, and then 20% of the cases to the police and how the police work. So, and in fact, she called us freeloaders. Okay. So, all these, in looking at these invisibles that I've spoken of today, I think a need should be addressed. Every Children's Day, I'm so frustrated. They call me, what are the programs you are having for Children's Day? I tell them every day is Children's Day for it. And when the country, every person has this on the mind, that every child is my child, whether he's a planner, he's an architect, he's a housing person, whatever, then only, and especially the our ministries and those who rule us, that every child is mine and child cannot be relegated to 4% of the budget or whatever the madam spoke about, then I think children will really be granted rights. Otherwise, this is all lip service. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuradha ji. That was really wonderful. All your grassroots experience showing up in your presentation. You talked about.
Can I just add one
please.
Line?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. You had asked me actually during the meeting to speak about Bal Sena. So just in 2 minutes. Actually, that concept came out of evaluations of child lines, which we did after 5 years. And in that, one of the evaluation programs, the kind of answers children were getting, they said, why don't we have our own Sangatna? Okay. So I said, you do it. I will help, but I'm not going to be the one to start it. They said, we don't have voices. So that's how the Bal Sena came up on a Gokulashtami day. And the concept is we go to schools and institutions. We used to do it as a childline outreach, and then of course Dhyandevi's inputs are there, and we ask the children to elect two members from their own classes as representatives. Like that, we have a school committee, we have a zonal committee of all area schools together. We had dreamed of having a city committee. The Bal Sena representative is also represented, used to be represented on Childline City Advisory Board, and they used to be very vocal, let me tell you, about things, and made a great impact. These children can work fantastic things. They have got their playgrounds improved. We give them exercises in their zonal committees, like you chart out issues of your school, your city, your country, and sorry, your school, city, country, and the world. And you have to also give solutions. You are not going to be topiwala netas who will just give ashwasans. You have to find solutions and give me a timeline for it and tell me what help do you want and from whom. They do fantastic jobs. They have improved the toilets in the schools. They have got their playgrounds clear. They have helped their friends who were being sexually abused. They have prevented child marriages. They escalated those problems to us, of course. And so many fantastic things. They got the bullying issue going. They got the crushing and travel issues to schools, like Jeroo mentioned. It's so unsafe even to cross the road from the bus that they get down. All these issues were brought up by children. We could work on them with our city advisory board. Then the school bagless day, that is what was started through the Bal Sena through Child City Advisory Board. It actually got implemented even before the law came. So that is the power of children, and let's recognize it. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuradha ji. That was wonderful. You talked about the invisible children and the need to change the mindset. You rightly mentioned that the laws are there, the policy is there, the rights are given to the children, but there is no mindset to implement all this. Many a times in my training programs, I talk about three types of advocacies. The first is where one needs to make a change in the policy or bring in a new policy. The second one is where the policy is there, but the implementation is not there, and you need to put pressure on the bureaucrats or whoever is concerned for that for delivering the results. And that is the second type of policy. But the most difficult and the third type of advocacy is to change the mindset of the whole set of people who are involved in getting the results that are desired. And in children's case, there are many stakeholders, as you rightly mentioned, from the education department to the government, to the bureaucrats, to the netas, the topiwalas, as you rightly mentioned. The other important aspect you mentioned was that there is lack of motivation in certain class of children, and therefore education is not taken seriously, and one needs to work a lot on parental education and parental awareness to bring about this change. It was wonderful to hear from you that all the children all that the children need to learn more is just a hug from the teacher or the caretaker, and the ability to listen to the children, let them speak, let them express themselves. And this you have done formally through the Bal Sena structure, which also in Gujarat we have many organizations doing that. Our own organization also has such groups, but the pioneering work was done has been done in Gujarat by an organization called Shaishav. I probably hope that one of them from Shaishav is participating in this webinar. The need for open spaces you emphasized, and also the Also, the way children of Bal Sena changed this situation in their immediate environments by influencing the implementers and caretakers and the government. So it was wonderful to listen to you, Anuradha ji. I have since all the three presenters have made their presentations. I think shall we open the house to questions? If Uma, you will have to help me with that, or Chitrakshi, with the questions, if they have come up in the chat box.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
There isn't any questions as of now, except for a open comment by Michael, sir, where he mentions that a lot of children have faced increased child abuse, especially after COVID, because of males who were out of work and were at home without drinking, and during the day while the women were out trying to earn an income. So that was one thing he has come across, but he also mentions that on a positive note, the DFID urban poverty projects in the 80s and 90s in 5 Indian cities had preschools which included playing and learning equipment supported by the London University Institute Education. The preschools were also contact places between mothers, children, and health programs. Thank you, Michael, sir, for that input.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
Are there any questions?
No, there are no questions as such. People have just expressed thanks for the inputs and interesting presentations.
Then I think I have a question for all the panelists, and it is about the children's participation in policy issues. Everyone must know that 7 departments and ministries have come up with a concept of child-friendly villages, wherein the panchayats have been asked to do certain things to make the villages child-friendly. But there is no such initiative for the urban areas, for towns and cities. So do you have any comment or suggestion on this, Bharti ji, or anyone, Anuradha ji? Because at the grassroots level, there have been efforts to organize children, to make them vocal, to make them think on issues related to their own rights, etc. But that has not reflected in our planning process formally for the urban areas. So any comment or observation on that? Yes, Anuradha.
I'd like to come in on this, Rajesh ji, possible? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, please.
So we do have something called Child Friendly City Initiative, which was actually first launched at the UN Habitat 2 conference in 1996. And then UNICEF has now taken it forward. They define child-friendly city as a city or, a unit of governance in which the voices, needs, priorities, and rights of children are an integral part of public policies, programs, and decisions. And they've been working towards it slowly and gradually. The work is rather slow, but I won't say that we have not seen initiatives in urban areas. We don't have the ward level child protection and welfare committees as envisaged under Mission Vatsalya as yet everywhere. Whereas in the rural areas, we do see village level child protection committees that have been set up, again, with the help of NGOs. In the urban areas, very few such initiatives can be seen at the ward level, but I won't say they're not there at all. There are difficulties, definitely, because children, are not recognized as a constituency, number one. Number two, we only listen to them according to our convenience as adults, which is the most unfortunate thing. And I'll give you an example. When this whole debate was happening around child marriage, the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act and the POCSO Act, especially on the age of consent, because in urban areas, urban cities, we are seeing a lot of such cases where young children, adolescents are particularly expressing their sexuality in different ways. And when they are unable to express it openly, then they choose marriage as the institution and they run away, and there are cases of elopement. When these kind of laws are framed, and when the Prime Minister had said that the age of marriage should be increased to 21 years, there was actually no conversation happening with adolescents anywhere, whether rural areas or urban areas. But at least in urban areas, we needed a lot more of that conversation. And there should have been engagement with adolescents, which was completely missing. A lot of the adolescents have been against raising the age of marriage from 18 to 21 years for some very, very practical reasons. For instance, there's domestic violence in their homes, and they want to run away from those situations. Nobody's being able to address that domestic violence. And on the other hand, we want to punish them for, running away from such situations through legal means called marriage. So there are many other issues, I think, which require attention, and we never talk to children. That's what I have to say at this point.
Number of panelists did talk about the need for play areas, gardens and parks, and open spaces. And I think you all must know that recently, only this year, from 2024, UN has declared 11th June as the Play Day for children, which is a new initiative, which means that at the policy level also they do emphasize on the need for open spaces, etc. But unfortunately, in the economics and the mathematics of land prices is so bad that in Ahmedabad, in the ward where I'm living, I've seen 10 schools closing their shutters in past 10 years. And they have gone. There is no replacement. And all the children, I asked, it wasn't a research as such, but I asked some of the children going to that school, and they said that now they've moved to schools which are very far away from their home, and they take auto rickshaws or buses, and their families pay through their nose to travel to school. So this is what is happening. What one must do to, Kirtibhai, you could also answer this because you are an architect planner. About
no, I wanted to come in. I think not as someone who introduced the webinars, and I'm extremely sorry that my system collapsed and I couldn't complete the introductory part. Hopefully, we'll come back and do that. But let me come back on this whole matter of child and city. You won't believe me, I think we're doing this webinars for last 3 years, and this is 119th. This is one webinar I was very, very keen on, and I'll tell you why. As a matter of fact, for the last 3 days, I've been doing an exercise. And I'll just share you, I think that exercise is, what I did was this, that I just made a list of what children need, a list of children's need. And I wrote down this 11 things. I wrote down safety, security, education, the schools, health, which is hospitals and those things, play areas, housing, that's good homes, clean environment, services like water, a violence-free place, love and affection,
and family. I made this list of 11 items in terms of what children need. On the other side, I started making a list of kind of cities we have. We have informal cities, we have formal cities, we have organized cities, we have haphazard cities, we have cities of the rich, we have got the cities of the poor. And I said, what might be very useful is to look at all this. Look at safety, and look at a big city and a small city, a developed city and undeveloped city, a formal city and informal city. And what do children have in the context of safety? In the context of this whole 11 parameters. And I thought it's a terrible, terrible scene, honestly, I think, and I'm not being pessimist at all. The reason is this, that children are not on our radar. We do not look like, we don't see poverty, we don't see violence. Similarly, we don't see children. And for this particular meeting, I was looking at numbers and I was absolutely staggered that even though we don't have the kind of new census, take 2000 or 1100 census, which is 13, 14 years ago. So India had 1210 million people. 164 million were children under 6, and 372 million between 6 and 14. We essentially were talking about 536 million children. And I did very quick extrapolation, thought that we may have something like 690 million children now, today, at this point of time. Now, this is a huge number. And we're planning our cities. We essentially are saying that, 877 million people will be in our cities in 2050, 27 years down the line. And we're not ever talking about that 48% of them will be children under the age of 14. And they need care, they need affection, they need love, they require family, they require good homes, they require drinkable water. And I'm not talking about slums. So what I'm trying to say is this, that if you start looking at children, if you start looking at planning of cities, you will find out how we are missing the bus in a very, very big way. This is one part. Second part which I wanted to mention was this, that once again today, I was talking to a Jain Muni. I'm a Jain. My cousin sister died, and I think, in that today. And there was a Jain Muni there. And while I think, something was over, some ritual, I was talking to him, and he told me about this very interesting Jain concept of violence. And this is the only religion which talks about violence in these three forms. It's a manasa, vacha, karmana. Violence that you do physically, that's karmana. Vacha is violence you do through your language and your expression. And manasa is a violence that you do through your mind. And I realized that the biggest sufferer of violence of all three kinds are children. And I think it's worth thinking about. That if this is the kind of violence our society has, what are we giving them to? That's the second thing. And the third thing was this, I also was trying to make a matrix in terms of what would I like to look when I look at cities in the context of children? I said, cities, children, and poverty. Cities, children, and vulnerability. Cities, children, and inequality. Cities, children, and governance. Cities, children, and housing. Cities, children, and transportation. Cities, children, and regulatory framework. I just made a huge list of 18 items, and I'm going to work on it. But what I'm trying to say is this, that our cities, the way they are, the way they're growing, and if we don't really kind of take care about them, the biggest harm we will cause is to our children. And when we cause harm to our children, we are essentially causing harm to our future, because they are our citizens tomorrow. They are the ones who will shape the society. They are the ones who essentially will take where this country goes. I'm personally very keen, and we're going to have a second webinar on this, and I'm sure we'll structure in such a way that all these things really come out. That when I think about this, child in a small city is different child in a big city. Child in a formal city is one thing, and child in a informal city is entirely different thing. A child in a developed city, child is an undeveloped city. So what I'm trying to kind of say is this, that we've got to kind of look at all these gradations. You've got to look at all this conditionalities which are obtained, and how do you deal with a very najuk, very delicate thing like child and its growth and development, where they become sensitive citizens. So that is the larger sort of a message I was very keen on in the context of this particular webinar. All the four speakers, including Rajesh, have brought out some exceedingly important ideas, and we would essentially learn from them. And Rajesh, I think when we plan our second one, I think, and I'm very keen that we should continue. We should do the second webinar on child and cities. So basically, I think discipline ourselves to talk about all these dimensions of cities: financing of cities, planning of cities, governance of cities, poverty in cities, slums and cities, water in cities, and I think bring in children into how are we looking after them. And I think even if it's just a 2-hour session, we'll be able to bring out a lot. Today, I think we have already kind of laid a very interesting foundation for that. So that is what I wanted to say. I also wanted to take 1 minute of everyone's time to complete what I couldn't complete, because my system broke down. And that is to kind of tell, when it broke down, I was about to tell you why we are doing this webinar series. What is the purpose? Why we are persisting with it for last 3 years? Why have we reached 120 webinars? And I wanted to tell you, because this entire effort that we're making for last so many years essentially is trying to build a constituency. And this constituency building essentially revolves around an idea that our cities, our Indian cities, are not in pink of health. That they not only have problems, they don't really show that we have reached a stage, we have systems, we have ideas how to deal with those problems. And these problems are not only in terms of what to do with population, as I just mentioned, Imagine India's cities and condition where this country is going to add something like 400 million people in cities in the next 27 years. Are we ready? Are we ready with jobs? Are we ready with infrastructure? Are we ready with housing? Are we ready with schools? Are we ready with hospital? We are obviously not. And there's no way we're going to be ready. And that reality is not going to change. This is just one part, the people part. Look at the finance part. We've been running this series of webinars on municipal finance, and some very interesting things came out. Now, one of them was this, that this country requires to spend $640 billion in the next 20 years to look after, to bridge the gaps we have in our infrastructure. $640 billion. And then we started looking at, and I said, what have we done? We looked at JNNURM, which is one of the better planned, better managed infrastructure investment program. Jeroo, you would not even believe this, but under JNNURM, and in 10 years, this country invested just $14 billion huffing and puffing. We just didn't have the capacity to invest more than $14 billion in 10 years. And we're talking about $640 billion in 20 years. So what one is talking about is capacity. What one is talking about numbers. Now, in a situation of this kind, if our cities are what they are, we as people, we as government, we as civil society, we as professionals have not understood the nature of India's urban challenge. And it's absolutely clear from whichever way you see, whether you look at slums, whether you look at housing, whether you look at climate change, whether you look at environment, that we require quantum jumping, we require new solutions, we require paradigm shift. And that essentially requires a wider societal partnership to achieve. It's not going to happen by government, it's not going to happen by academic institutions, it's not going to happen. And this effort we are trying to make, very small, very insignificant, essentially is a step in that direction. We have been talking about, and this is probably the first time ever that urban issues have come on a public platform in this particular manner, and that to 120. And we are not going to stop at 120, we're probably going to do 200. But we essentially are talking, and of course, there are several other things we are doing also, and I wanted to mention them. But the point I was trying to kind of make is this, that this webinar series is not just to chat, it's not just to kind of, find good friends and get them together on a platform. This essentially is to build up a constituency of people who are concerned, constituency of people who want to do things, constituency of people who believe that this requires much more than what we have at our disposal to make our cities livable, make our cities sustainable, make our cities, I think, people-friendly, and make our cities inclusive. So that's the whole effort. And I'm sorry, I think my system closed down. I couldn't talk about that. And I thought, even at the end, let me kind of take this opportunity and share with you. And the reason this is to be shared with you, Bharti ji and Jeroo, is to get you in this process. Each one, I think I was talking to Bill Drayton of Ashoka Foundation, my great friend, day before, and we were talking about change makers. And he made a very interesting statement. He said, Kirti, everyone is a change maker. When we started Ashoka 35, 40 years ago, we were trying to make change makers. And now Ashoka says everyone is a change maker. So everyone has a role to play. Everyone has a contribution to make. Everyone has something to give. And this is that process. This is the process. And that is why I'm saying, just look at cities from children's angle. I don't know how many are listening today, but how many know that there are 700 million children in this country? For last couple of months, I've been going to architecture colleges and ask question, how many villages we have in the country? And no one has ever answered to me that the country has 638,000 villages. We don't even know what we have. Similarly, if this are the kind of children that we have, this is the kind of cities we have, this is how we are going about doing things. We got to think very fast, and we got to think in a very concerned kind of a way. So that is my call. And I think my system is giving some trouble. So if I disappear, but I've finished, I don't want to kind of say anything more.
Anuradha madam had to leave, so I was just trying to bring her in, but she has left.
Yeah. I think Rajesh, if there is nothing, if finished, I think let me kind of thank everyone again.
Yes, please.
And wonderful to have you here. It was very educative. As I said, there's so much more to be thought about, and we will hope to have a second webinar on this subject pretty soon. And we will once again contact you and kind of get your views in terms of how to do it better. Who are the kind of people we should get in, because we want to focus on cities and children, as I said, in the context that needs to be seen. So thank you very much again. And Jeroo, again, thank you, Bharti ji. First time I heard you, and I'm so impressed, and I really want to come and talk to you at some point of time. And of course, Anuradha ji, we always in touch. Rajesh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you, my
so
colleague
much.
Bhuma ji, and thank you, I think, Chitrakshi, for their work behind the scene. But for them, but for their work and effort, this would not have been possible. Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
Jeroo.
Thank you, everyone.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajesh. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Jeroo, we are going to connect pretty soon, huh? We're going to talk in terms of what do we do with the child line, huh?
Jeroo has left, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.